With no further ado, as Charlie always says, Karen, welcome to the George Espenlaub Show.
Thank you, George. Delighted to be here.
And how are things where you are?
Well, I live in Los Angeles, but right now I'm in Carmel Valley, California.
You have had quite a life. Could you give us a little bit about your background?
I started out at 8 years old. I was one of those obnoxious children on the Art Linkletter show. You know, kids say the darndest thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was chosen to be one of those children, and I had wanted to be a spy, but suddenly I got to see that I missed school and got all the free grilled cheese sandwiches and orange sherbet I wanted, and so I announced on the air I wanted to be an actress, because I said, oh my God, you know, miss school and grilled cheese sandwiches? I mean, that's the life for me. And strange thing is, Art Linkletter said, oh, yeah, right, okay, good luck. And do you know that I never wavered? I found the thing in my heart that I wanted. And so I was very fortunate to go to school in England. I went to the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts and became a member of the Actors Studio. And a lot of my dreams, you know, in terms of training and teachers. And then I went to New York and did some extraordinary plays I was lucky to get. And then went to L.A. and I've been doing a lot of television, playing gypsies and psychics and Italian moms. And so I started writing, and now I found another love. So that's kind of my life. I mean, I've had some interesting men in my life. I was dating King Hussein of Jordan when I was in England, and my fiancé was Lex Barker, you know, who was Tarzan in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
He was much older than me and dropped dead when we were together. But anyway, yeah, I've been very blessed to have a fascinating adventures in my life.
Have you ever looked back and said, wow, I wished I could have been a spy?
You know, it's really funny because I've always wanted to play when, you know, in the movies or in the theater, and I never have. I don't know. I think that was, my mommy took me too many spy movies. I think that's what it was. I don't think it's probably the life anybody would fancy. It's not quite like the movies, I think.
You know, your book, The Whip, is one of the best books that I have ever read in my entire life.
God, I told you, it gives me goosebumps. You have no idea. It means so much. Anybody who's a writer out there, you know, knows what I'm talking about, because it's like having a child and somebody looking down into the crib saying, that is the most beautiful child I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's like that. Thank you, George. It means a lot.
The moment that I began to read it, in fact, the moment that I saw the book itself in the front cover, I thought, wow, this is going to be a doozy. And when I began to read it, it captivated me in such a way that I could hear the sounds, smell the smells, see the characters. And, you know, sometimes when you're watching something on television, you're trying to get ahead of it and try to figure things out.
Yes, yes.
This was one of those times that I just got into it and stayed right with it and went where it went without trying to figure out what the next move was, what the next step was, so on and so forth. And it captivated me that I couldn't put it down.
Oh, I love that. Wow, that's the dream of every writer, that you say those words, and particularly that you can't put it down. I'm going to tell you a little secret for the writers again who are listening. If you notice, I make little short chapters. I mean, they're 2 pages, some are even 1, 2, 3 pages, I think. 4 pages are the longest. Part of, I think, you know, holding the reader, other than, of course, the story and the characters, is, you know, these little short chapters, because it's like eating popcorn, you know.
Right.
You know, I finished 1 chapter, and it's like, oh, I can do another one. And suddenly, you've read 10 chapters. And so that, and it makes a momentum in the book, a speed, a rhythm. But I love that you said that. I don't want to spoil anything, but which was your favorite character? Who would you like to have been in it? I always ask that question to men particularly.
I would have liked to have been Charlie.
Oh, yes. So good for you.
Yeah.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I would.
Most of the men answer, one of the guys. She had it both ways, huh?
I'm telling you.
And this is based on a true story of a woman. Her name was Charlotte Charlie Parkhurst, and she was born in 1812. She died in 1879, and she was a famous stagecoach driver for Wells Fargo. She lived her life, most of her life, 30 years of her life, as a man during the gold rush in California. And she was the first woman to vote in America as a man. She killed the famous outlaw Sugarfoot, who robbed his stagecoach one too many times. I don't want to give away any of the story, but I am going to say that a horrible thing happened to her. Her family was destroyed, so she put on men's clothes and went from Boston to California on a ship, which was no easy thing at that time, and went to California, became a famous stagecoach driver, and then we won't tell you whether or not she finds the killer. She's buried in a place called Watsonville, California, which, by the way, is about 15 miles from where I am now, in the Oddfellows Cemetery, which some of you people might know was a famous charity group, particularly at that time, the Oddfellows. And she was such a great guy and helped so many people that they asked her to join, which was a very hard thing to become a member of. So when she died, they were getting her ready for her funeral, and they went, oh, my God, the great Charlie Parkhurst is a woman and has had a child. George, the thing is in those days, as you read, women could have no dreams. Only men could have dreams. Mm-hmm. Women had about 2 choices, maybe 3, being a wife, a prostitute, and if you had some education, which not all of them did, and you could read, you could teach a little bit. That was it.
That wasn't much, was it?
That wasn't much. Those are not very exciting dreams. Men were the ones, they just left their families all over the United States. It was like going to Las Vegas during the gold rush. Mm-hmm. Oh, my God, they'll get a fortune and come home and it'll change their lives. Well, a lot of them just died in California. It was such a rough life, and some of them did make a little money and had a second family and never went home. The lovely thing is that you could reinvent yourself. What I mean by that is, let's just say you weren't having a good time in one city and people didn't like you or something for some reason. You move on to another city and you totally reinvent yourself.
Tell us, Karen, where can they get the book at?
It's on Amazon.com. It's also on BarnesandNoble.com. There's an audio book. And for those of you who watch Deadwood on HBO, mm-hmm. the woman who played Calamity Jane, Robin Weickert, was the narrator of the book. And she's wonderful. She was at Sundance, and she just won the breakout performance of the year there in a movie called Concussion. And she's going all over now, Berlin Film Festival and stuff like that because of it. The audiobook is wonderful, too, and that's on audible.com.
Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, and whoever else may be listening to us, get the book. Trust me. You that have been hanging out with me for quite some time know that I get pretty excited about certain things and not so much excited about other things. This is one of those things I get excited about. The Whip. Please get the book. I'll guarantee you, you get the book, you won't be able to get your nose out of it until you're done. And you will be telling people, everyone around you, you will be telling them about the book called The Whip. So get it. Karen, how did you find Charlotte Charlie Parkhurst?
I was in my 20s, which is a while ago, and I was reading a magazine called Cosmopolitan Magazine. You know, that magazine on how to find a man?
Uh-huh.
And there was this wonderful article about women of the Wild West, wild women of the Old West. And one of the parts of it was about Charlie Parkhurst. I thought, how in God's name would a woman hide herself? How would she disguise herself? I mean, she has no beard, no Adam's apple. Those macho stagecoach drivers even peed together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
How did she carry this off? Then one day I sat down and I kind of scribbled out a screenplay of it a long time ago, about 20 years ago. And it did get a famous agency called the William Morris Agency took it on, and a Canadian producer named Kevin Sullivan optioned it. At that time, there was no cable. CBS was not too interested in cross-dressing. It passed and nothing happened, and I put it back in the suitcase. And then all of a sudden, my mama passed away, and, you know, I had a lot of feelings, and I wanted to dedicate something to her and to my dad. So I started writing the book, and it took me 6 years and 27 drafts to do it.
Was it hard to find information about Charlie?
Yes, it was. There's, as we know about history, period, there's a lot of fables. We don't know anymore what is the truth and what isn't. We do know that it's on her gravestone that she was the first woman that we know of to have voted in the United States as a man. It's interesting, she died of tongue cancer from smoking too many cigars and too much chewing tobacco, too much liquor, and so did General Grant. Same thing. We do know that she killed the famous outlaw Sugarfoot when he robbed her stagecoach the second time. I went to Watsonville. They were people whose families, great-grandparents and such, knew about her. And, you know, she's the big heroine of Watsonville because that's where she lives. So I interviewed a lot of people. Her middle name is Darky, and in those days Darky was African-American. That's what they used the term for. Apparently she had a relationship with a runaway slave. So I took that information and I made a love story out of all of it. Who would know that I would have to have a dictionary at hand because there's so many words that they did not use then that we use now.
Right.
So I had to look up many words to just see if they were in existence. Like the word okay, you saw that in the book. It came out in the mid-40s, 1840s. And apparently there's somebody recently has just written a book about that one word, imagine it, the genesis of okay. Huh. And so I chose that it was, you know, one of the things was that it sounded like an Indian term. Indians used to make a sound that was a word that was like okay when they made a deal. And so the Americans picked it up.
I read a book recently. It was written by Len Lamensdorf, The Ballad of Billy Lee. He did similar to what you did. He took the historical facts and wove the story around it, and he used the spoken language that it was back in that day. When Billy Lee would talk, it was totally different than what I would say or how I would say it. So
right, and he was black, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the black characters in my book, two of them were free slaves, but their youth was one from Mississippi, another, you know. So the language would have been probably closer to Billy Lee. But I don't like to write in dialect because it's too hard for the reader. You know, you almost have to transcribe it a little in your head as you're reading it.
Yeah.
So I chose to not really make any of them. I mean, Charlie would have a little accent, all of them. You know, I'm going to answer a question. Okay, so you're a woman, let's say, and you want to disguise yourself as a man in the Old West time. How would you cover that you didn't have a beard? Whiskers. How would you do that?
I have no idea.
Well, that's what I thought. I mean, what did she do? Well, I did some research. These stagecoach drivers were up there. They all had filthy faces.
True.
Because of the dirt and the grime and all of the muck on them. You know, they were dirty all the time. And so I had this, I don't do it in the book, I don't write this, but I had this kind of fantasy that part of her getting ready for work would be to go out in the garden and put dirt on her face.
That makes sense.
I was told that she apparently had a kind of gruff voice. Well, that can also come from drinking a lot of alcohol and smoking a lot of cigars. She wrapped her breast with a lot of women. By the way, I'd like all your listeners to know that there were a lot of women who lived their lives as men.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. In particular, they found over 400 women dead in the Civil War who had fought as men.
Really?
And nobody knew. Because, of course, you didn't have to take nobody, no doctors checked your body. I mean, you didn't go through any of that we do now. They just, took a gun and put on men's clothes and went out and fought for many different reasons. I think people kind of let people live their lives the way that they wanted to. I think people just said, okay, maybe I think this person is a woman or this person is a man, because there were even a few men who dressed as women. I did research on that, which is very peculiar. It's mostly opposite, women dressing as men in the Old West.
Driving a stagecoach, it's not a piece of cake. She was around horses, and she was learning how to handle a team and so on and so forth. So,
in her youth, yes. Yeah,
so little did she know that was all leading up to when she would become one of the top whips.
I know. Isn't that amazing? And, if you go to the museum in San Francisco, the Wells Fargo Museum, there's a little corner about Charlie Parkhurst. Now, the thing is, you didn't have to really be strong, but you had to be, really multitasking, because she drove 6 team horses. That's 6 horses. Each horse has a rein. The other thing is interesting is I went off to a wild Mustang ranch in Utah. And a lady taught me about horses there, wild horses, and about how you relate to horses. And there's a thing where, you got to treat horses with respect, and they get it. And if you even thinking, I'm talking about your thoughts, not just your actions, because there's I know this is strange, but horses particularly pick up mental thoughts, vibrations. I don't mean literally what we're thinking, but our feelings towards them. And I believe that Charlie was able to handle those teams because she was so good at that. I read somewhere that there was this kind of rolling, calm curses she'd say to the horses, to keep them going. It was like a lullaby, only it was cursing.
Was she the only stagecoach driver that we know of, or were there other women stagecoach drivers?
There was only one more that we know of. Only everyone knew she was a woman, and she was African American. She was a black lady who drove. She wasn't for like any famous lines. I forget which line it was. Somewhere in the South, I think it was. She drove a coach, but they let her, and she was a big lady, up to 300 pounds. No one messed with her.
How long did she work for Wells Fargo?
I don't know the exact amount, but she worked in the beginning for a lot of little companies that merged into Wells Fargo. She also, after she got too much sciatica, she was great at cutting down trees. And she made a lot of money from that. And then she owned a bar and a rest stop for horses and stagecoaches and stuff. She took on people like Mark Twain. She took a lot of fascinating people on her route. And it was the adolescence of America at the time. This was the backdrop of what was happening. We were growing and struggling. We were teenagers, America. It would be a very interesting series. or it would be a very interesting movie, I think. It would be kind of a female Unforgiven, don't you think?
Yeah, to be a woman and dress and take on the part of a man, that has to be an art in itself. I mean, I don't think just any woman could have done that. Do you?
No. As I write about this in the book, women are maternal and men are more aggressive. They go out, they're the hunters, the gatherers. This funny thing, when I was a child, my grandmother used to say to me, cross your legs or the devil will go up it. I put that in the book, of course. Men don't cross their legs. And it's a very vulnerable, weird thing for a woman to keep her legs kind of wide open like a man does.
I was trying to picture what it would be like to take that chaw, the tobacco.
Last time it could be horrible, but I think it's like anything else. You probably get addicted to it.
Yeah,
which is what she did.
I wonder if they practiced in private.
Well, you see what I do with her. I mean, I have those two guys on the ship helping her a lot, teaching her. And of course, she was a very good observer. You know, living out west, she could have no friends, really.
Right.
I mean, she could have male friends and then be a male guy with them, but not really. She couldn't be too close to people, anybody, for fear. And imagine if she would drink a little bit too much, and, she'd be careful with her tongue. So she was supposed to be really attractive when she was young.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is what I do. Isn't this what you would do if you were a woman? I would gain a lot of weight, get very husky on purpose to maybe cover my body a little. I wouldn't bathe because men and sweat were kind of synonymous. Smell of cigar smoke a lot and whiskey and hang out at the bars a lot, and your hairs must smell terrible. Oh, my God. You know what everybody must have smelled like, now that I think about it?
Yeah. Everybody stay upwind from everybody else, I guess.
Oh, my God, particularly the guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, please go to Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Audible.com, and get the book.
If anybody wants to go to my website, Kondazian.com, I was dialogue coach when I was growing up for Hervé Filiches, the little midget on Fantasy Island. I'm the one and there's pictures of us
I see
on
that.
the website together. I'm the one who taught him, the plane. The plane. That's how we used to say it. Anyway, there's pictures of, all kinds of fun pictures. And listen, George, you are fabulous. You are the most fun time I've had. Well, I don't remember having I feel like we're having lunch or something here.
Yeah, I always tell people that when we have our guest on, it's just like we're sitting across from each other just chatting.
Oh, my God, this has been wonderful. And,
Karen, I thank you. I really thank you for taking the time.
I don't know you, but I'm sending you a big hug, okay?
All right, I'm sending them right back.
Thank you, George. You take care, and God bless it to everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very, very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.